Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, the first half Brendan Aronson goal of the podcast. Hello, quality ball striking, my old friend. And I'm joined today by the second half Brendan Aronson goal of the podcast. That apology certainly worked from this man. It's Martin Riley. Martin, how are you doing? It's a weird time to be recording.
Yeah, incredibly weird time to be recording. You can see sun in the background of Adam, which is very rare for our pod recordings. But yeah, I'm doing good. Had a quiet day so far. Not really eating a whole lot, other than some toast with cheese spread on for breakfast. But yeah, I'm doing okay. How about you, mate?
Yeah, busy morning, moving stuff around. Then went on a run. I'm doing a bit of training. It's one of my goals for 2026, which I started in 2025. Going well, but a bit tired, a bit lethargic now after that. And I've had a pizza for my lunch, which probably wasn't the best food to eat straight after a run. Probably could have thought something a bit better. But here we are. Yeah, really weird. Saturday, about 1:30, 2 o'clock, we're on now. So later than usual, but it's fine. And we've left it a few days for the game to settle because we hadn't lost in 8 matches and then we go and lose like that. Yeah, probably needed a bit of break. And certainly someone who also had a bit of a break recently, Martin, but remarkably came back way earlier than planned was Joe Rodon. And that's great news for us.
Yep. Massive news, yeah. It's good that he's back and did seem to be at his normal levels. I was worried when I saw him on the lineup that as he rushed him back for this one. But it does seem like he's okay and he did handle the game fine. Maybe I would have liked him to be taken off a bit earlier than what he ended up. Was he actually taken off in the end? Really late on? I think he was. Yeah. But yeah, we'll get into the subs a bit later in the pod. But yeah, I'm glad that Rodon is back. He's probably close to our best centre-back. Certainly has qualities that none of our other centre-backs have got. Recovery pace for one. And yeah, so it's great that he's back. Big leader in the squad. We'll need him.
We will indeed, but Martin, we're recording on Saturday, as we say. The Derby game's tomorrow, which means that most people listening to this will probably already know the result of that game. We're not going to be doing anything around it. We're not going to be doing a preview or review, so this is our only real opportunity to speak about it before the match. Again, a lot of people will have already heard this now after the result, and they'll know whether he started or not, but I presume someone like Rodon and maybe a couple of others in your mind shouldn't be involved against Derby. We should be thinking about managing some players' minutes. I'm thinking of a few here off the top of my head that have just played tons over Christmas and a few players that have never had to do this really because in the leagues they've come from, they don't really play over Christmas at all or they play only a tiny bit. Anton Stack being one, Gabriel Goodmanson being another, Joe Rodon, of course, just coming back. Maybe he'd be another. Would you be starting any of those three players? Is there anyone else that comes to mind for you that you'd be like, nah, let's just give you the day off? At most on the bench.
Yeah, Dom Calvert-Lewin, Anton Stack, Gabby Goodmanson, Joe Rodon, Bogle, if he's back from injury now. I think he was expected to be back around now. So if he's fit and in training, do not start him. Don't even put him on the bench. I think the players who would be fine to play here would be Seb Bornau. He's definitely one. If he's available, he should be playing this one. It's frustrating that Byram is injured. That he picked up that little injury, didn't he, from travelling, and that potentially is a mistranslation or some thing from Farke there. But and Nemacha I'd expect to play. Pirot I'd expect to play. Maybe one of the youth squad. Maybe Sam Chambers could get some minutes here. But yeah, the main ones are the ones who I don't want to see are the ones that I mentioned at the start because they've played a lot of minutes and they're pretty important to us. I'd like to avoid Pascal Struijk playing if possible, but he may end up playing just because we don't have many left. Well, he's our only left-sided centre-back, and the one who we need to rest more is Rodon. Potentially BL could be okay. So we might see BL Stroud as the centre back pairing. But yeah, we'll see how it is. And also Ampadu's probably going to end up playing, but he should be okay since he had that games break not too long ago. But yeah, that's all I've got to say on the lineup for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've obviously talked about the squad depth this summer quite a bit, and we do have obviously a 25-man squad, including 4 goalkeepers. So, but at the same time, that means you should be able to kind of rotate in a lot of areas a little bit. We've seen Tanaka not play much lately, so it'd be good for him to get a game. Hopefully, he's played well for those listening and started. If we're wrong, we're wrong. But our view, anyway, which is what matters here, is that there should be quite a few players rested. There should be quite a few players who barely see any involvement. I don't mind some of the big lads, and that's like big lads in terms of their size, but also in terms of their standing within this squad. I don't mind a few of them being on the bench in case, it is level in the 85th minute and we think it's going to extra time. I don't mind if Stack has to play half an hour. That's okay. I just don't want him to be doing a start and then he doesn't come off until, maybe he doesn't come off till like the 90th minute or something. And then I just don't like that. I don't think that would be sensible personally. But yeah, I don't mind some of them travelling, some of them being on the bench, just not all of them, please, Daniel. Please give a few of them a break. And hopefully we've won the game. I would still like to go through it. I know that everyone will say that the FA Cup's not a priority, blah, 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 but we're a Premier League team now. Like, Palace won it last year. A Palace, like, miles and miles and miles better than us. I don't think so. I think they're obviously a better team than us, but there's no reason we couldn't go on a bit of a run here and we couldn't have a bit of fun with it. And we're so far clear of the bottom 3, West Ham, 8 points clear, that I think, it's not too much of a distraction in our current situation. One other thing last thing I'll say is I'm expecting Jack Harrison to play left back like he did against Sheffield Wednesday, which is obviously not a very familiar role for him. And he didn't do great there against Nottingham Forest when he came on, but I do think he'll probably play left back here because it's an opportunity for him too. And he obviously got an assist against Derby for us in the playoff semi-final for Kemar Roof. So, maybe he'll get one here. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So we'll get back onto the stuff that matters. And obviously there'll be some people that haven't listened to this podcast because they don't really want to go through this game. But we've always said that the losses that we have are usually the best pods. So hopefully that's the case today. Just a reminder, we've got bonus content coming up at patreon.com/ASAW Patreon, and also to like and subscribe on YouTube if you've not already. Go over there and have a look. We've been getting better views on that, and it helps us just to grow and do more stuff. If we can get properly onto YouTube and get past a certain point, it will be very, very good for us. So please do us a favour and go and do that. If you're a Newcastle fan, even come over and give us a like and a subscribe. You can gloat in the comments if you want. That's fine. Shall we get into this though? I think we should. This would be the longest game summary of the season, I think, because it probably was the game of the season. So, lock in, everyone. Leeds approached the game in their usual 3-5-2 shape, with Newcastle opting for their preferred 4-3-3. In the opening spells of the game, Leeds had the better of the chances and possession, with Eddie Howe's side not being able to have a shot until the 25th minute. Meanwhile, Leeds were able to get in behind Newcastle a few times with good territory, not always ending with a shot, but did still create some chances. Following the opening spells, Newcastle got into the game a little bit more, had some good territory and some good chances. However, it was actually Leeds who scored first when Dominic Calvert-Lewin won the ball high up the pitch, laying it to Aronson, who struck with pace and accuracy into the bottom corner from outside the box. Wow. Not long after that, Newcastle equalised. There was a cross which was cleared. It was headed back into the box. Ball played across by Gordon. Voltemada laid it off of Barnes, who scored in the bottom corner. Following the goal, Newcastle had a good spell, with Leeds unable to get much territory, with Newcastle having good possession around the Leeds box and some chances to score as well. However, the next goal came from Leeds thanks to a penalty awarded for a handball from Malik Chow, with Dominic Calvert-Lewin converted the penalty, making the score 2-1 in the 50th minute. Following the penalty, there was a late shout for a penalty for Newcastle when Joe Linton went down in the box. However, the Brazilian was awarded a yellow instead for diving. In the opening of the second half, it was largely Newcastle with possession. However, they weren't able to get any shots on goal, with the first shot coming from Leeds. However, eventually, the Newcastle pressure did eventually tell, with Bruno Guimaraes putting a lovely outside foot pass into the box, with Joelinton scoring from a looping header into the far corner to make the score 2-2. Following the goal, both sides had chances, but Leeds had more of the possession and Newcastle better of the chances from set-piece chaos. However, it was actually Leeds who went and scored next in the 79th minute, attacking quickly following a turnover with Ilya Grove playing Aronson in, who carried into the box and finished into the far corner past Nick Pope. However, Newcastle followed this goal with a long spell where they had most of the possession and lots of chances, some small and some large, and eventually this pressure told into a penalty being awarded, with Aronson handballing just inside the box and Guimaraes converting past his compatriot Lucas Perry with the score 3-3. There were then chances for both sides following this goal, and the game became a bit basketball-y. However, the last of the pressure from Newcastle resulted in the latest winning goal in Premier League history, as I'm sure many of you have seen, with that man again, Bloody Barnes, scoring against the bottom corner in the 102nd minute, with Leeds taking no points back to Yorkshire, as you all well know. In the end, the possession stats were 62% to the home side with 38 for Leeds, 2.43 expected goals for Newcastle, 1.89 for Leeds, 18 shots for Newcastle, 14 for Leeds. Big chances wise, 3 apiece, which is not a huge surprise. And that's basically it. Oh, Martin, even reading that out was breathless and a bit like the game. I don't think I've ever said however as many times as I have for a game summary there. There were just so many twists and turns. Easily the best Premier League game of the season for a neutral. If you're a Leeds fan, possibly the worst. Leeds are well on top for the first 20, 25 minutes. Newcastle had a few spells, as we mentioned in that game summary, but really we were the better side in that period and we did score. But then the game became way more chaotic and end-to-end, kind of shortly after the goal. In your opinion, why was this? What actually caused that shift for it to become just so chaotic?
Well, I think, first of all, Newcastle were maybe surprised by our approach to this game. I think they were maybe expecting us to be more passive in this one, with it being away from home at St James's Park. I think maybe they was expecting to have a relatively comfortable start to the game, but we were incredibly aggressive in the opening spells of the game, and the high press was pretty much man-to-man press. In some moments it was very aggressive, and I think that really set Newcastle aback a bit, and that meant that we was able to have that opening spell where we did largely dominate the possession stats, and even when we didn't have the ball, Newcastle didn't really create a whole lot in those opening 20-odd minutes, and they didn't have a shot, like I said in the summary, until the 25th minute. But then when they got a handle in the game, they started fighting back with some aggression of their own and going quite direct, and they saw gaps where they could open up us quite easily, especially with some long switches from one side of the pitch to the other, which generated a lot of problems for us. And so it just generally went like that. There were some spells where we weren't as aggressive with the press, and largely after we'd scored when we were ahead, but that was obviously very brief in the first half. But yeah, it was just pretty much chaos from the start of the game through till the end, and very exciting match for a neutral to watch. And to be honest, for any Leeds fans who were watching as well, it was really exciting. It's just the way it ended, which was a massive sucker punch. But I think overall we can be really proud of the way we played in this game. We said before in the preview that this was one of the toughest matchups for us in terms of the sort of squad that Newcastle have got. Not necessarily the best technically in the league, but certainly the best with the out of possession side of the game. The intensity of their players, the physicality of their players was all probably the best in the league.
I said in the Discord, it's them and Arsenal, I think, the two most physical teams. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so that was shaping to be a bad matchup for us, but we took the game to them and we probably out-muscled them and out-physicalized, if that's a word, them in lots of spells of this game, and I think that really surprised them. And yeah, I think we can be really proud of what we did in this. We created a lot of XG at St James's Park, which a lot of clubs have.
The season, I think they've conceded.
Yep. Yeah. And the only club to have more than us was Man City at St James's Park. So yeah, we can really be proud of the amount of chances that we laid off. Obviously, they did also create quite a lot as well themselves. But it should be noted that both teams have the same amount of big chances. So even though they did create more XG than us, I think a lot of it was quite low value chances. And even like one of the goals they scored was really low value, like the Joelinton header. That was just superb pass, a superb header, and we just got really unlucky with that. But yeah, it's hard to think if there is anything really tactical which caused the shift to become more chaotic as the game went on. It's just one of those affairs that you struggle to control. Two sides who are very passionate, and we've got fan base who are very passionate. Probably that's just one thing that led to it. It's just you can try to control it all you want, but some things are beyond your control, really, in these sort of affairs.
It's that cliche, like, bit of a Darism, I guess, but like Leeds and Newcastle are the kind of clubs that they just want 100% effort from their players. They just want that fight, that spirit, and that, like, this game was full of it from both teams. You have to say, for sure, it wasn't like either team was like just laying down. It was full on for most of it. From about the 20th minute, it just became absolute mental. And they were certainly up for the battle. I'm going to say one thing tactically, but I'm going to save it for the next bit because we're going to talk about something there. So I'll save that. I just wanted to quickly do, and this is probably a weird time to do this, but big picture. As our first loss in since the Man City game, which was 9 games. So 2 defeats in 9 games, I think is what it is. If you think about that, though, that means that since that Man City game, we have been actively involved. And I said this on Blue Sky, actually, to someone I was speaking to. We've been actively involved in 9 games in a row where we have competed with the opposition, where the game hasn't completely got away from us, where we've not completely blown teams away in all of those games, sure, apart from maybe Palace. But in every single one of those games, Leeds have been involved. And as a newly promoted team, I feel like that's all you can ask for, to go on a run like that. Yes, you've lost 2 of those games, but that is just fantastic. Two wins, 2 losses, and the rest draws, I think is a really decent return from a 9-game spell. And some really tough fixtures in there: Newcastle, Liverpool, Chelsea. Liverpool's twice, Man City, a couple of others as well. Not easy. So I'm really, really pleased with that. And we've come out of it. And if you rewound time to probably around the time of that first Liverpool game, and you looked at West Ham's fixtures and Burnley's fixtures and Wolves' fixtures, you could have easily envisaged, especially with West Ham, things tightening up again. And instead, we've actually increased the gap. They had some really, really kind fixtures. They drew twice to Brighton. They lost to Fulham at home. They lost to Forest at home. And within all of that, we've managed to like increase the gap. And yeah, feeling really, really good about us in that sense, even though we've got some really tough fixtures on our horizon still. And it only gets a bit easier in March. But I feel like now that's the point. We've got these tough fixtures coming up, and we know we can go to, if we can go to Newcastle and play like that, we know we can go to, they've got a run of like Man City, Chelsea, and Villa are all around the same time in February, Arsenal in the end of January. So it's a really tough period for us, but we can compete. We know we can now. So that's why I'm pleased. Anyway, just on the kind of the way the game panned out then, Martin, let's talk about our out of possession approach here first. What was it we said in the preview about if we allow this one to become basketball-y and chaos? Remind me.
That Newcastle would ultimately win the game because that's what they want from games. They want it to be end-to-end and physical because they've got the players who can take advantage of game situations like that. They're built with pace and power in mind, and players like Gordon and Harvey Barnes who have got pace to burn, attacking in transition constantly. It's going to be too much for any team to handle if you allow the game to go that way, and that is precisely what happens. And just talking about our possession approach, I've prepared some screenshots just to share with the people on YouTube. So just bear with me a minute while I bring those up. So, where is it?
Don't show the whole running order, but yes,
don't worry. Don't worry. I'm going to share it on my other screen, which doesn't have the running order on when I can work it out.
Yeah, I want to talk about our possession briefly as well. So this is a good segment, hopefully. Sorry to listeners, not watchers.
No, so just to kind of reiterate, this screenshot is 2 minutes in to the game, and if you just look at how aggressive the man-to-man approach is there, but the ball is at the feet of the goalkeeper. We have 2 players inside the box. We have a player just to the left of the box. We have Ilya Gruev just outside the box, and we have James Justin, who is just in shot, not too far away from the circle outside the box. So you've got 5 players deep into the opposition half, and just off screen as well, there's more players who aren't that far away from this whole area as well. So it's just showing you the amount there is. And here's another one. If you can see it, it is. Can you see the new screenshot now, or is it still the old one? I think it's still the old one. What's it doing? Let me stop
Yeah, it's the
sharing
old
it.
one. Just get the new one up.
Yeah, 1 sec. So yeah, and this is even earlier in the game, like a minute and a half in, and I'm really just sharing this because it is really funny. Just for people who are already listening to the audio version of this, inside of what is maybe a 10, 15 foot square in the pitch, there is 9 of our players. Just it's just mad how this result was from a counter pressing situation where just lots of players got congested around each other.
Very narrow as well. It's
Yeah,
reminded me a
very
little bit
narrow.
of something I don't want to think about.
It's just like it's nearly inside the halfway line circle, the circle in the middle. It's nearly that kind of narrowness. So there's 9 players, and inside this area where there's 9 players, there's only 4 Newcastle players. So it's not like they had all sucked their players in either. You've got on the right hand side, you've got Harvey Barnes in loads of space. On the left hand side, I think it's Lewis Hall who's on the other side. I think. So yeah, that this didn't persist, and it wasn't something which you often saw. But I just wanted to share it because it was quite amusing, to be honest. But yeah, the out of pressure approach in the games was really a sight to behold, and I think maybe this was Fark trying to impose himself a bit more in proceedings, and because we've been more passive in some games. Recently, it's been shifting more towards the higher end of the spectrum, though, of the pressing aggressiveness. In the last 2 games, we've been quite aggressive, and that it certainly does seem a shift from what we have had seen in other games where we were quite, I wouldn't say passive, but just not as aggressive as this, just more of a mid-block. And although this approach did lead to one of the more exciting games of the season, probably the most exciting game of the season, especially for the neutral, it maybe wasn't the best approach to get a win out of this one, but it was really fun. So I'm not going to complain overly.
Yeah, I think it worked in the early periods from what you said earlier. Like, I think they didn't expect it. I think we caught them cold a bit. But then I think once they'd got a bit more used to it, that's when it became more chaotic. That's why I think there was a bit of a shift. It was in that period, and they were able to get a bit more of a foothold. I've got a bookmark saved from John from ages ago on Twitter. It reminded me of this. And he said at the time, this was the Chelsea and Liverpool games back to back that we had at Ellen Road. He said to so start the differences between how Chelsea and Liverpool faced this Leeds block. Chelsea looking to pin the back line, whereas Liverpool looking to draw it out and hit the spaces behind. Now, I don't think Newcastle purposely were drawing us out. I think we were being that aggressive. But I think when they knew we were doing that, they were able to basically just allow us to get forward, and then they could pass it forward quite quickly through their best technical players. And they found quite a lot of joy then, either in a wide centre mid role that would be pulled out, and then they'd get some progression through him, or it'd be a winger or a fullback. And they were getting down on our sides a little bit better when they worked that out. And that's where I think I noticed it. I also wanted to just point towards, because we get told we should talk about what Farkas says post-match a bit more. For one of the things I really, really found quite funny was, because obviously it's his idea, it's his plan to play that way. As you say, it's almost like his way of imposing himself on the game for us. And Fark admitted after the game that we should have had more control late in the game. This is not verbatim. I've not got his exact quotes here, but it's basically borderline what he said. Like, it's around what he said. He said we basically shouldn't have let it go, and he did use this word, basketball-y. He just said it shouldn't have become that, which is really funny that he used that exact phrase. And then, like, I've seen quite a few people on both Twitter and on Blue Sky after the game basically not wanting to criticise him for how that game panned out in the end, but he's admitted to the error without actually saying the words. And that aspect of that is on me, because he's saying, yeah, we should have had more control. It shouldn't have been so basketball-y. it's on him to take the accountability there and to actually do it. And he didn't. So I think some people were very much not wanting to criticize him too much, but I do think there has to be some blame lying at his door for that particular aspect because, yeah, it was too chaotic and it worked for us somewhat. Of course, we got a few goals from it. And maybe we wouldn't have got, for example, the third goal the way we got it had it become a bit more controlled from us, a bit less chaotic. But I don't know. I don't know if it was the right way to go at St James's. I think that there's just a ground and a team where the ball kind of gets sucked into the goal. Sometimes I think it certainly did with the Barnes goal at the end. So I just don't think we should have allowed it to become like that. I think Eddie Howe probably enjoyed that aspect in that final 60, 70 minutes where Newcastle probably were the slight better of the two teams, even if we did have our own moments. Let's discuss the end of the game then, Martin. We have a bit of a habit, and we've mentioned this privately quite a bit recently, of conceding just after we score lately. There was also that one, we scored and then we didn't take too long to concede to Barnes for the 1-1 goal, only a few minutes later. And then when we went 3-2 up, it wasn't that long after. It was about 10 minutes after we went to 3-3. But there's also a bit of a habit just after half time, isn't there? So what is actually going on there in that particular moment? Why can't we have a bit more composure to kind of retain the ball, stay solid, and maybe get into our shape for a bit? Why does suddenly we get pulled out quite easily and suddenly the goals go in? Do you have an answer?
So just for talking about the period just after the second half started, I was looking out for this to see where it was that we were doing, and we actually weren't as aggressive as we had been at spells during the half. It was probably more of an aggressive mid block than a full on high press at the start of the half, and I think it was just some individual quality from players which caused it. We were looking to keep a lot of bodies back, and in fact, on that goal there was a lot of bodies in the box. Maybe too many of them were too deep in that, but we'll get onto that goal a bit later on. But I don't think we were as aggressive in the opening spells of the half. But I think potentially the instruction from Farker was that while we are at the winning game state, to keep the aggression dialed down a bit. And I think that's certainly what we saw in when we were ahead in moments. We weren't as aggressive, and we were looking to keep things on a handle and try to make it difficult for Newcastle. But then when we went back to an even game state, we were straight back with the aggression, and then that led it to be more basketball as the game went on. And because there were these goals, sometimes these things happen. Newcastle have got a lot of quality players, and that first of all, the assist from Guimaraes was just absolutely superb, just outside the foot. Didn't look like the whole lot he could do from that situation, but he still picked out a man.
We we jinxed Chow. Well, I jinxed Chow, didn't I? But it was very much the opposite with Lewis Hall and Bruno Guimaraes, especially him. Like, he put the team on his back. He was so good in that second half. Like, that was a sensational moment. Like, I don't think there's been many better assists against us this season. It was unbelievable.
No.
Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I think that was all really, really wanted straight, that we weren't as aggressive at the game states, and it was very largely tied to the game state. Obviously, Fark doesn't get on the pitch after each goal and say what he wants to happen. He'll tell them what he wants them to do based on what the game state is. Because some people like to say game state isn't a thing, but it definitely is. Teams will have instructions as to what they'll be wanting their players to do depending on what's happening in the game, and they'll have that drilled into them. So that will be why it was definitely Fark's plan to be that aggressive when we weren't winning, and he definitely wanted to win this game 100%. You cannot question that. But late on, we certainly did have opportunities to arrest that and stop it being quite as end to end. And I may as well just go into the subs question, which we've got a bit later on, because we're going to get to that, and just about Fark's in-game management. That he's had the opportunity to make subs, and Newcastle made their subs around 75 minutes, I think it was. Around then was the time to make subs, and the only sub that we did make was Okafor. Not Okafor, sorry, Nature came on first, didn't he? Nature came on for Stack, was it? Or am I
you sure it wasn't Okafor?
I felt it was Nature, but it could have been Okafor. totally losing my head about what happened in this game. Let me just bring the actual game back up so I can see
That's what
who
I'm
came
doing.
on the line.
This is great podcasting.
You're right. It was Okafor
For
and
stat.
Okafor for Stack, and yeah, that was an odd decision really for me.
Yep.
I'm not. That made it more end to end. So that the opportunity there was. I can understand why he took off Stack. Stack was looking a bit tired at that point, but there were also other players who were also looking tired as well around that time. So making just a one sub there was a strange choice. And at that point, it was what was it? The scoreline then? It was just after
I was
Aronson
3-2. We'd just gone
had
up.
scored.
Mm.
So yeah, that was a more attacking sub right after we'd just scored a goal. So if instead of making that switch, he'd brought on Tanaka instead for Stack, which is a like for like change, that may have solidified us a bit more and led to us being able to control the game more, and potentially the penalty doesn't happen. Who knows? But yeah, it's such a chaotic game that it's hard to nail down what would have happened with what. But he certainly could have made more defensive-minded subs, and or just the attacking subs that he did make them earlier. Like the one I'm looking at really here is putting on Nonto for Aronson. Why did that happen in the 97th minute?
I know,
At
doesn't
that
it?
point in the game, Aronson was knackered. He really was, and he had a fantastic game. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's almost that he's scared of maybe not scared, but hesitant to make these changes when he's at a winning game state. I think it has been something of a theme. There has been subs made for when we are losing. He's more than happy to bring on subs in that game state.
Mm.
So he will always throw on all of his attackers to try to get the win. But when we're ahead, it seems to be a different story. He seems to make them quite late on. I'm not sure if that's whether he thinks that he's wasting time by making the subs late on.
There definitely is an element of managers will make a time-wasting sub. That is a thing.
Yeah.
But I agree, it should have just been earlier, some of those.
Yeah, have one time wasting sub, but when you're bringing on 3 subs in the 97th minute, it's obviously going to lead to more time being added on. The referee's going to see that and think, yeah, I see what you're doing. I'm not going to let that slide. And then that's probably what resulted in the game going on for longer than the 10 minutes that have been called to be added. So, and Aronson also was injured around that point as well. I think he's fine. He's just a strain, but still, that took him longer to get off the pitch as well. So all these little things added up. And yeah, I can't really explain why he made that Okafor sub. I can't think of any logical reason for it. The Mature sub for Calvert-Lewin, I could kind of understand that. At the time, I didn't. I put that in our group chat, like, why are you making that sub? Why are you bringing Tanaka on? Why are you bringing Bornau on? But after I can understand it was so we could try to retain the ball further up the pitch and get up quickly. But again, it maybe wasn't the best choice as well. So yeah, there is definitely some blame that you can put at Farke's feet, but you can also put some not blame, the opposite of blame, credit. That's the word I'm looking for. Some credit at his door as well, because a lot of the good stuff we did in this was down to the approach which he made for this game, unsettling Newcastle, and it probably did work overall, but just little tweaks in that late on could have made a big difference in the way this game ultimately ended. We may not have won, because I think Newcastle probably would have scored at least once, no matter what subs we did make, but we might have avoided one of those goals with different subs in earlier.
We got told that we gave Newcastle a bit too much credit on the last pod, the preview, by a couple of people, because, and this is very fair, they are not a great team at breaking teams down when they're sat deep, which is interesting what you were talking about the game state, because yeah, it was very clear late on we were probably happy for a point at 3-3, and then we weren't pressing so aggressively, we weren't so high at the pitch, and we were sat deeper, and we invited them into our box and we conceded. So in that sense, it wasn't the basketball-y aspect that caused that goal. But that's where I'm like, maybe the subs did. Maybe you needed to give these players a bit more time to be on the pitch. It was like you throw in these 3 on so late, asking them to do a job, and then the other players on the pitch that were out there, some of them were absolutely knackered. I don't know. I think that the handling of that situation was probably not the best. I think they should have come on a bit sooner. Bornau should have maybe been on 10, 15 minutes earlier than he was. Tanaka for Stack instead of Okafor, all of that. The Okafor thing, I'm in my head about maybe he thought attack was the best form of defence when we were winning, and maybe there were going to be more opportunities to transition because there would have been 3 forwards still on the pitch if he keeps Okafor on and then only has 2 midfielders. But that left us susceptible when we went to engage high still in that period. There was that moment that I think quite a few people were frustrated by, which was when we pressed really aggressively and Newcastle got around us. They then broke in numbers and Ampadu had to take someone out on halfway, got a yellow card for it. Like, it was a good yellow to take, but he shouldn't have even had to have been in that situation. And I think that was because we had too many forwards on the pitch. I think we needed another midfielder for rest defence. We had one fewer for rest defence when Stack goes off the pitch. So suddenly you're leaving yourself open. And I think that all came into that. So, yeah, frustrating. Even Ethan picked up on something about Okafor as well. He said, watch him after the kickoff when we scored the 3rd goal. He did a stupid overcommit that opened the flank, and then other than the great recovery that he did, Goodmanson struggled to stop any of the balls down that side. And they were getting more balls into the channels at that point and causing us more problems. Even on the 2nd goal, Miley picked it up wide. No one really puts a lot of pressure on him. Managed to pull the ball back into a good area. Guimaraes creates it from that. Fair enough. But yeah, just a few little tweaks, as you say, is probably the exact way I would phrase it. And I think we could have got out of there. I do think they probably still would have, the pressure would have told, even though Newcastle struggled to break teams down like that and they prefer the game to be a bit more open. I still think they would have just about managed to find a way, whether that was a penalty or just a ball bouncing around the box that Barnes puts in, whatever that might be. But we could have got out there with a 3-3, and I would have been delighted with that going into the match. So disappointing in that sense. And then Hosty picked up on this as well, and he said, if Longstaff's available, and he was available, but Farke chose to put Byram on the bench because he wanted a fullback. He said he does think he would have come on at 3-2 straight away. He also agreed with me and said that Bornau should have been earlier because this was Rutten's first game back. He's probably not trained all week. He probably needed to come off a bit sooner. So I just think that those are the fine margins, and maybe Longstaff would have been even just for 15 minutes, would have been a really good sub here. Just get in their faces and play against the team that, he knows very, very well indeed. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So we'll end the first section of this pod here.
Sorry to interrupt, just a quick one. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to like and subscribe to help us keep the content coming. And if you want even more, you can support us over on patreon.com/ASAW Patreon. You'll get bonus podcasts, exclusive articles, and access to our Discord community, all while helping us make more of the content you love. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's move on to the second half of the analysis where we'll discuss some specific players' performances in a bit more detail and go through a few listener questions as well. But as always, we're going to talk quickly about the goals and break them down. Actually, there was one thing I wanted to add from the first session, which I forgot, which I will just really, really quickly do, which is the Johnny Cooper thing that he put out. Like, we just talked about the subs and needing fresh legs, blah, 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 for tactical reasons as well, as much as anything. But we did cover the most distance versus Newcastle by a team in a Premier League game this season and the most by a team in defeat in the last 6 seasons. So it wasn't for a lack of effort. So the boys did leave it all out there. It's just that, goodness me, they could have done with a bit of help. I think some of those players were looking really, really leggy. We'll probably talk about those a bit more later on, but that was a frustration. But let's talk about the actual goals here, and maybe that ties in with legginess. On the last goal, maybe the concentration's not quite there when it's so late and they've been going for so long and it's so draining. And then St. James's Park, it pulls the ball into the net as it always does. Yeah, maybe there's an element of that. But let's talk about those other first 3 goals, Martin. And I know particularly on one of them you wanted to talk about some details, but take me through them. So the first one, then.
So the first one, I think the main one I'd look at would be Pascal Strauch.
Boo! That's how we are not allowed to criticise it. No, we are, absolutely.
No, yeah. He's not someone that we do criticise often because most of the time he's amazing and he's sexy. But yeah, in this moment, he definitely was hesitant. After the ball had knocked down, I think when Gordon put it across, he sort of hesitated a bit to get into where the ball was and sort of just didn't do anything. And that hesitation led to Walter Marder getting the ball, laying it off Barnes, who obviously scored because it's Harvey Barnes. He's going to score. But yeah, we could have stopped the ball from getting to Harvey Barnes if Stroud was a little bit more aggressive in that situation. Potentially, he didn't want to give away a foul in the box, give away a penalty. But I think sometimes you have to take those risks, and in this moment, he didn't make the right choice. So he would be the main one I was looking at on that. I'm not sure if you have any different thoughts on that.
No, I don't think the header's particularly amazing. It's not terrible, but he doesn't get as much purchase on it, which is annoying because that's actually been one of his fortes in terms of a defensive sense. Like, he gets his head to the ball often and he gets it away from danger often. It doesn't matter if it 50p's off his head in those situations as long as it goes far. But it didn't go very far this time, did it? And that was part of the problem. And then the ball still around the box. And like you say, just hesitancy is a problem in the Premier League. You can't really think about that. I think there's a couple of other players that probably could have done a bit more in that situation to just like get a foot in. I think Baltimore finds it a bit too easy to just lay the ball off and like ease into the back of the defender on his arse. I didn't love that, but I'm not going to say too much because I do agree. Strout is probably the most culpable there. Probably was his only majorly bad moment in the game, but those are pretty significant when you concede a goal from them. So, yeah, a shame. I saw someone criticising us on Twitter actually in Ethan's replies, which was interesting, saying we don't do it enough. Essentially, that's not word for word what they said, but they're basically saying, I hope all stats aren't we were watching. Yeah, we were. We saw it. But I just think he's got a lot of credit in the bank now because he's been pretty exceptional for most of this run. And we love him a lot, and he gets way too much criticism from this fan base, which is why we will do our damn best to defend him. But the second goal, Martin, which I think is probably where there's a bit more to talk. Actually, I don't know if there is, but there are some things to talk about. One of the first things I didn't like is Gruev's closing out on Miley. I think he needs to get out to him way quicker than he does and not allow him to just basically get to the line, turn with the ball, dribble with the ball for a couple of seconds before Gruev's even anywhere near him. I didn't love that. That wasn't great. After that moment, though, I have to say I think it's one of the best goals we conceded all season in terms of the actual sheer quality of what happens after that point. Guimaraes having the vision to even see that pass into the box with the outside of his foot, and Joe Linton with the execution of the header. Could you argue Rodon should be a bit nearer to him and a bit more physical with him? Maybe. Could you argue that the midfielders were a bit too deep, so they gave Guimaraes too much space to move on the edge of the box to actually pivot to do the action that he does? Maybe. But I do think it was some real quality there. I don't think there's been many times where you've seen that. I know I kind of love Bruno a bit too much. I think he's brilliant, to be honest. He's an absolutely exceptional footballer. But it was really good from him and Joe Linton, to be fair to them. Is there anything else you wanted to add on the second goal?
I just think you're giving the Guimaraes is in too much space. We don't have anyone close by him, and
midfield's too deep, isn't it?
Yeah, that he's their most dangerous player from these sort of situations. Is the main one who you look at who could create an excellent pass out of basically nothing, and that is exactly what happened. Again, I've got some screenshots to share on this one. Just 1 second.
It's funny because I'm just talking through the screenshot before you put it up for the listeners. Strauch is actually the one that gets out closest to him in the end. But Strauch in that image you've got there is the deepest player for us. So he's the one that ends up engaging Guimaraes best, but he's the one that starts the deepest. So that should have been Ampadu's job there if you're going to talk about anyone. Maybe Stack, but Ampadu probably.
So yeah, you've got Ampadu like around here, where my cursor is, and in this he's looking directly at Guimaraes. So he knows that he's there. He's aware of his presence there. Strauch is all the way over here. So look how far away he is from Guimaraes there. Quite a big distance. And then if I bring up the second screenshot.
Yeah, like I said, he's the first player
Strauch. He's covered all that distance, and Ampadu has not moved. He's been in the exact same position the whole time, and he was the one who was aware of Guimaraes being there. Strauch didn't have a clue. Strauch was watching where the ball was coming because he was set to defend across. That could potentially have came in if was it Miley who yeah, it was Miley, wasn't it? So to defend across, which could have come in from Miley. So he had a reason to be in that position. Ampadu wasn't really picking up anyone. The players who were in the box had other players who could be keeping an eye on them. He was just looking around, really, just taking a moment. And he should have been the first one there to Guimaraes. He should have been intensely closing him down as soon as he got the ball. He was in the line of sight where he would either go for a shot or go for a pass, so he would have been in the better situation to do the job to defend that moment, and he didn't.
Totally agree. I just really don't understand how Guimaraes has seen that, though. Like, to try that in that position is so weird.
Yep, and he's an outstanding footballer, and outstanding footballers do outstanding things in moments which mere mortals like us cannot see.
Maybe that's where Rodon doesn't see it as well. He doesn't think that pass is going to be played, and so doesn't get as physical with Joelinton as he needs to be. And Joelinton just gets that quick flick, which is really annoying. But again, those are fine margins.
They are indeed, and I would more put the blame of stopping that ball from going in the first place and making sure a player like Guimaraes is sufficiently marked. Like, Ampadu doesn't have to be like on top of him, but if he was just like if I bring back the original screenshot, like when he saw him there, if he would have moved himself from there to there, like just when he saw him, if he would that could have even stopped Miley from trying to play the pass to him, because that pass went along that line, didn't it? Along there. Yep. So if he had just stepped out just a little bit, you could say that whoever this is here, number 17, he won't have been marked, but Stack is just here. So Stack could have kept him up. He could have passed him on it, but Stack was following him into the box anyway. But anyway, that's enough debating on that one. For me, it's on Ampadu. Is that one? And
you could almost say, and maybe I'm being really all stats, aren't we, on brand here, but you could almost say that Strauch actually does quite a good job there to even notice it, run out to it, to put some pressure on. It shouldn't be his job, but he does.
He covers a lot of distance there, and in a very short amount of time, and he's close to stopping it. Yeah, he was one of the furthest away from Guimaraes when the ball was played.
I think he was expecting a shot. I don't think he was expecting a pass either. So anyway,
exactly. Yeah.
Go about the third goal then.
So the third goal obviously was the penalty, and I find it hard to commit too much blame for anyone really on this, because I think it's just incredibly unlucky. I've put a video in the Discord, so for the people listening who are in the Discord, go and watch that video to know what I'm talking about.
Which thread is it in? Is it in the questions thread?
It's in the topic discussions thread. So in that video, it shows one angle of Aronson. In fact, I can. I'll have to quickly share the running order, which I don't really like to do, but just for the benefit of the YouTubers, this is one of the reasons why you should be watching. But yeah, you see here like a screenshot of this video, and where the ball's been passed, and you see where the ball hits Aronson, his arm isn't outstretched at all. But then in the second image, it's the ball which forces his arm to be outstretched. The ball pushes his arm out there, and I think there's another angle where it does seem more like his arm is already in an outstretched position, and he was moving it out there as the ball was played. But this video clearly shows the ball forcing his arm out rather than the other way around. I think he jumps with his arms kind of wrapped around his body a bit, and then the force of the ball pushed it, because it was whipped in with quite a lot of pace. I think he was going for one of those cross come shots, which can either cause problems for the goalkeeper and go in the far corner, or someone just gets a touch on it and it goes flying into the ball.
So the cross come shot.
Yeah, indeed, we all do. And so that I think it's incredibly harsh to blame Aronson for that. All he was doing was jumping for the ball. By that point in the game, anyway, he shouldn't have probably even been on the pitch. He was knackered. But he's back there defending, because that's who Aronson is. And I don't want to give him any blame for it, because it's just incredibly unlucky, in my opinion. I think it could have gone either way. I think if we hadn't have been awarded a penalty in the first half, this penalty probably doesn't get awarded either. I think they'd probably cancel each other out if they weren't awarded. I think this is softer than what our penalty was, but even our penalty had a touch of softness to it, and it could have gone either way as well. But yeah, it is what it is. But I'm not putting too much blame on anything there, other than maybe Daniel Farker for not making relevant subs in the correct time.
Yeah, maybe. I I also think he's a bit unlucky that he is inside the box. It is only just. He's just right on the line, so a bit unlucky in two aspects there, Brendan. And we don't hate you. We appreciate your efforts in this match, and that was a little bit unlucky. And then the fourth goal, do we just have to bow to Harvey Barnes? Because has a player ever screwed us more? Now it's 8 goals against Leeds in his career, which is by far the most, including this now goes back all the way to almost signing for us and then at the last second doing a Max Aarons and pulling the plug and deciding not to, having already decided on your squad number because they got a late loan offer from West Brom and he decided to go there. And then later that season, he put in a man of the match performance for West Brom in a 4-1 win. And that was basically the start of Harvey Barnes tormenting us for many a year to come. So do we just have to bow to him, or is there more that we could have done there? It does feel to me like there's a bit of an element of there must have been a lot of tired legs, 102nd minute.
Absolutely.
We were definitely not making it as basketball-y. We were definitely deeper there, but maybe a bit too deep. A lot of players just kind of in the box, but without actually marking anyone, without actually thinking about who they're picking up. And yeah, it just falls kindly, gets a shot away and he scores. So who are we blaming most for it in terms of not only the shot being got away, but in terms of the shot itself and whether it should have been saved or not? What's your thoughts?
I don't think there's any real one individual who I'd look at, say, because it was very chaotic when that was knocking around the box and those sort of situations. There's only so much you can do to control things. And yeah, someone could have put the foot in a little bit sooner, but but there isn't anyone who would look at, because nearly everyone who was on the pitch at that point was knackered, other than the few players who had been brought on like 3 or 4 minutes before. Those are the only players who won't have been knackered who were on the pitch. There have been a lot of people who've been putting the blame on Lucas Perry, and I can kind of understand that. But if you look at the shot again and watch it, the amount of bodies that goes through, how late he sees the shot, and the fact that he improves the XG on that by quite a significant margin. Let me just bring up FBref for this. So the original shot was 0.08, and it was doubled in quality to 0.19 per FPRF, but I think FOTMob increased it even more. I think FOTMob increased it to around 0.4, which is a big chance. So that it was right in the corner. He saw it late. It may have looked like it dribbled there, but there's only so far Perry can get in that situation. But if there was anyone who had put it on, he's probably the closest, who I'd say. And there's been a massive amount of overreaction to Lucas Perry in this game. Most of the shots he couldn't do a whole lot about, in my opinion. Yeah, he could have pulled some outstanding world-class save for some of them. Maybe the Joe Linton header is maybe the one I'm looking at there, which would have been an outstanding save if he'd made it. And the penalties are what penalties are, so not going to get into that one too much. But yeah, I think I'm not saying Perry's been amazing. He definitely hasn't. He's had moments where he's let in some goals where he shouldn't have done.
Over the top to say that he's the worst we've had when that guy that tweeted it said Wiedwald, Melier. He didn't even mention Rahubka. Who else did he say? He just said a load of rubbish goalkeepers we've had, and
yeah,
it wasn't very fair because I don't think that's the case.
That's
a bit of an overreaction.
No, and it's still early days for Perry. It's the first time he's played in the Premier League, so he's still adapting to the league and what's demanded of him from there. But yeah, you can say that he hasn't been good, but he hasn't been as terrible as what everyone is making out that he has been. And the thing that was put in Discord about his save percentage, and yeah, he is the lowest in the league for save percentage, but Man United's new goalkeeper, Sen Lamons, is only like a couple of percent higher than what he is. He's 18th worst, but he's overall been good at stopping goals. So I think that's been taken.
Yeah, I don't like save percentage all that much. I much prefer the post-shot expected goals numbers and that sort of thing, which Perry is still in the bottom, I think, 4 and he's fourth bottom 4. But, like, still not great. So I agree with you. I think he's not been a great signing. He's been one of our poorer signings for sure, but has been an absolute disaster. Is there not time for things to change a little bit? Yes. I also hate talking about goalkeepers, frankly. I've almost given up with it because none of it makes sense. The
goalkeepers are one of those things which can change so drastically.
Yeah, so volatile. Yeah, because you've got, like, just as a random example, Michael Cooper outstanding for Sheffield United last season. Anyone that watched them knows it. His numbers were fantastic as well. This season, not the worst in the league, but like he's nowhere near the top sort of 5, 6, 7 goalkeepers at all. He's been really poor in that sense. So it can change so drastically that it almost feels like analysis over goalkeepers of the numbers is almost not worth our time. I wish Hosty was here to do this bit, but he's not.
And so just to reiterate the volatileness of goalkeeper, I think that not too long ago, Jose Sarr was really good at this
when he
level.
first joined the Premier League, his numbers were pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah, and now he's the second worst for post-shot XG
and was
in the
pretty
league.
bad last season as well. So just it can change so quickly, yeah.
It can be so volatile. So Perry could have a poor season this year, and then after he's got adapted to the league a bit more, he could do better next year. So I think with goalkeepers as such, they're a different species when it comes to outfield players.
Totally. And I think people are worried that he's going to somehow cost us, but we're up to this point and he hasn't. So last season I was more worried about Meslier because the points were really, really tight, and because it was such fine margins when you have to win games. And it felt like he was costing us wins to draws and draws to defeats on a couple of occasions. And that was really significant. In this league, it probably isn't as significant if we, go 7 matches unbeaten and somehow lose to Newcastle in the last minute. It's not the end of the world, even though it feels it. What also has not helped with the narrative here, Martin, is that Farke's been talking about the situation. And Farke definitely has his favourites that he doesn't ever criticise. Then he has the kind of like ones that he does have as kind of favourites, but he is happy to mention parts of their game that he doesn't like. And then there are certain ones that he clearly doesn't have as much of a thing for, and he is happier to dig them out. And Perry is one of these, because it's not been the first time this season that he's gone after him a little bit in a post-match interview. And he said that, he has to be doing better on the goal. In his opinion, I personally think he probably should have saved that for the dressing room, or if he's going to say that, then he needs to take more accountability for other things like the subs, like the lack of control towards the end of the match, which weren't in our favour.
I do agree on that. I want to speak quickly on Farke. I do think that it is definitely a shift, and that he's seeming to criticise players in press conferences more this season in general than what he has done in the past 2 seasons under him. And I do wonder if it is maybe just trying to change his approach with Perry as opposed to Meslier, or potentially it's more of a personality thing. Maybe he feels that Perry could respond better to public criticism than what Mez would, because maybe he thought that Mez would shatter a bit more and need to be protected. He's a bit of a younger goalkeeper than what Perry is. Perry is 28, 29, I think. Yeah. So he's older, so maybe he feels that he can cope with that pressure a bit more. But personally, I just don't like managers digging out players in press conferences. It's very Lampardian, and I don't like things that are Lampardian.
And then the last point on the goals before we move on to the very last section of the pod is, and it'd be remiss of me to not talk about this because we've been criticised before for this. We're a newly promoted team, Martin, and our quality is just not as good as a lot of our opponents. Newcastle are backed by Saudi owners. They've been Champions League football for 2 of the last 3 seasons. They've got all that money and they've spent a lot of it on players. You can say some of those signings haven't worked, but some of them certainly have. And they have a lot more quality than us. So I think it's fair to say, like, yes, it's frustrating at the end of the match, and Farke could have done some things better. Perry could have done some things better. Strout could have done some things better to maybe give us that point, maybe get us over the line, sure. But Newcastle also have an incredible amount of quality. Some of the players they're bringing off the bench, for example. But even then, like, I just wanted to talk about Bruno for just 1 second more. Like, he put the team on his back in that second half. He was absolutely outstanding. And when you actually look at the goals themselves, he gets an amazing assist. He scores the penalty in a pressure moment. And then he also plays that cross, which causes the chaos for Barnes' goal. He's the one that digs it out, loops it into the box. It's a good ball. It causes a lot of chaos. We head it down. It goes to Barnes and he puts it in. Like, he's just someone who is borderline world class, and like that's what we're dealing with for a team that aren't even in the top. Well, I think they're 6th or 7th now, aren't they? But they haven't been in the top 8 all season. So that's the kind of quality you come up against in the Premier League. And I know some of our listeners would thank me for saying that, because it's just where we're at. Our best players just not quite at the level. Maybe some of them would get in their squad. Maybe a couple of them might have a chance of starting. But for the most part, it's a mismatch, and they are better pretty much all over the pitch, and that's just how it is in this league. We talked about Lucas Perry then. We don't need to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about Brendan Aronson and end on some good notes, shall we? Because he was really, really good here, and I'm assuming he might be in the running for your man of the match. So maybe I should be saving this for later, but I think it's probably worth giving him his own section, because I said on the last pod, and I didn't apologise to him, but I said that I'm still not, enamoured with him. I still think there are times when he's frustrating. But it has to be said, like, for the last month and a half, the bad decisions haven't been as often with the ball when, the ball doesn't break down at his feet as much as it was in the start of the season. And that was happening. We had someone go back and look at those games, and they said, yeah, a lot of our attacks are dying at Brendan Aronson's feet, because they were. But now it's not happening as much. He's more decisive. He's not losing the ball. He almost looks, I don't know if it's necessarily stronger, Martin, but like, he's releasing the ball at better times so that he's not just getting out-muscled by a Joe Linton. He's not just getting pushed off the ball by a Malik Chow or a Fabian Schär. He's doing things when he needs to do them. This is against one of the most physical teams in the league, and he's had his best performance in a Leeds shirt probably ever. That's really impressive for me, and I'm really pleased for him, even though he's never going to be one of my favourite Leeds players, because there are just other players that I prefer. There are other players that have been more consistent in the last few years, but I am pleased for him. I thought this was really good. So what are your thoughts on Brendan Aronson after this one?
He was superb. Yeah, definitely without a shadow of a doubt, the best performance he's put in a Leeds shirt. And I think it makes sense. I think this was the perfect storm for a player like Brendan Aronson, because he's come up through the, not come up through it, but he's been part of the Red Bull system, as we know quite well. Red Bull systems obviously generally thrive in chaos. That is one of the things that they look to try to create. So it makes sense that in the most chaotic game of the season so far, that's when Brendan Aronson comes alive. He's definitely more suited to these sort of fixtures than he is where maybe we're trying to break down a packed defence like we did last season quite often. And I actually think he's probably going to end up with more goal contributions this season in the Premier League than he did in the Championship, just because the games suit him more. And that is why he's been improving recently. I think he's been maturing. He's still, although he's not old, he's also not really young either. He's sort of in that in-between age, isn't he? Where he's getting closer to his prime years, but he's still a few years away from them. So he's slowly maturing, and he was fantastic in this. He's so at the top end of so many different stats in this game. He completed the most take-ons. 100% success rate with the take-ons that he attempted, 3 of 3. He had the most touches in the attacking third. He had the joint most touches in the penalty area. He received the most progressive passes. Obviously, he scored twice. so even without talking about the goals, he's at the top end of the stats for a lot of things. The most progressive carries with 5. The most progressive carry distance with 90 yards. The most total carry distance with 166 yards. I could keep going on and on about his performance in this one. He was incredible. On top of that, he had 4 tackles and interceptions. And although it's not down as a clearance here, but he definitely did clear the ball really late on. We did that really gut-busting run back from, we just attacked, and then Newcastle won the break, and he got right into the far side and then cleared the ball. Don't know why that's not in the stats. FBref, work on that, because that's definitely a clearance. But yeah, he was superb in this game, and I'm really happy for him, because he's one thing you can never question about Brendan is his work rate and desire. That hasn't always matched up with his decision making, but in this one and recently, in a lot of games, they have been matching up. So I'll say what I said in the last pod: keep it up, Brendan. You can be a good Premier League player for us if you keep up this level of performances. But yeah, let's not all go to crap on him when he does drop a bad performance in a couple of games. I'm looking at you there, Adam.
I won't, but I wouldn't say, I don't think he'll ever be like a really good Premier League player or anything like that. He'll just be like useful enough, functional enough, where if he can continue to do what he's doing, he can get a decent number of goals and assists. I think he's got 7 now overall, and last season I think he got 11, so he needs 4 more to match that. I wouldn't be that surprised if he did that, if he continues playing. And he's clearly a player that Farke wants to play a lot because of what he gives out of possession as well, as much as anything. So yeah, and in our current guys, some of the games becoming chaotic, he can be good in those situations. So that's true. Obviously, he was one of the best performers, but we're going to do a few others in a second. Was there anyone else other than Perry? Obviously, Strauch on the mistake that you thought struggled a bit here and that you were looking at. I think like we're going to talk about Stack in a bit, very briefly, but he definitely looked absolutely shattered in that last 15 minutes, and I can see why he was brought off. Just the 10, 15 minutes before he came off, like he just looked done and he couldn't run. And I'm not that shocked at that because he gets through a lot of work and a lot of distance. There's a point in the season where he covered more distance than anyone else in the Premier League, for example. Probably isn't the case now, but he's still going to be right up there in terms of average for us. Unfortunately, we don't have access to that data, which is a shame. There's a few others as well. Like I don't think Gudmundsson's positioning was always great because they were getting down our sides a lot, which is a frustration because that's when Newcastle are strong with their wingers and their fullbacks. So I wasn't hugely pleased with that aspect, although there wasn't too much that came of those moments for them. Can't really think of anyone else. There's probably is other players. When you conceded 4 goals, you can find others that you can fault. We also had one question on which I'll cover myself. You don't have to answer this one about Pask specifically from Nick, one of our good friends in the Discord, who said, I felt like he vacated his position quite a bit tonight, which left us exposed at times. Do we think that was tactical from Farke asking him to step out of defence, as we've seen previously with Rodon? I think basically the functionality of the wide centre-backs in this system means that you are allowed to get forward a little bit more. You are allowed to pull into midfield areas. You're allowed to follow runners a little bit more into weird areas because you know that you've got that security of other defenders around you. You can essentially be sat in a back 5, can't you, when you've got all of your defenders back? So Gudmundsson, hopefully, or Ampadu will drop in if he pulls out on that left side, or Beale will pull across, whatever it might be. There has to be a little bit more fluidity when you play it back through with centre-backs like that. So I think that's all it is. And in possession, obviously, he will step out a bit more because he is a pretty useful player on the ball, that's for sure, in terms of his passing. But yeah, it wasn't his best performance, even though that did happen quite a bit. I wouldn't say that was the thing that I was frustrated by. It was more what we saw in the box with Pascal on this occasion. But anyone else you thought struggled, Matt, before we just talk about man of the match?
No, I think you've covered the ones who I would have mentioned in terms of players who struggled. Largely, a lot of players did well in this one.
Yeah.
There were that I think Gudmundsson was great going forwards, but did struggle with Harvey Barnes down that right side. But I will say that he didn't really get a whole lot of support at times in this one. He was often left 1v1 with Barnes, and although he did managed to stop Barnes from getting past him, sometimes he did also get past him as well in some moments. So there's only so much a fullback or wingback can do when they're constantly being exposed to 1v1 situations. It's one of the biggest criticisms we had under Jesse Marsh was the fact that our fullbacks were left isolated quite often because of the narrowness of the shape that we had, and that was certainly true here. I do think this is an issue, and it needs to be fixed. I think the way we've been trying to fix it is with the central midfielders dropping out to them to help in wide areas, and that can sometimes lead to the centre of the pitch having space from the half space sort of area. Something which I think John has picked on a few times is that the midfielders are stepping out to the wide spaces and sometimes doubling up when that leaves space from behind them where they've just vacated. And I wonder if there is alternative ways we could do it. Potentially the outside centre back stepping more to the wide areas than they have been doing. I think when the outside centre backs have been stepping out, it's mainly been into central spaces that they've been looking to do that. Whereas I think it probably would work better personally if they were the ones to step out to the wide spaces, and then the midfielders can cover the central spaces, but like where they should be. The outside centre backs can be that little bit further outside because that's where they're meant to be covering. They're meant to be covering the wide spaces to a degree, as well as the central areas. So I do think that there is ways that we can improve the balance of what we're looking to do and how we're looking to defend the wide channels and central. But largely, I'm okay with the outside centre back stepping out like Pask and Rodon are doing. Rodon does it a lot more because he's pretty much a right back in possession now, and whereas Pask is pretty much a centre back who sometimes steps out, but largely he is occupying central centre back positions, whereas Rodon is a bit different, so it's not quite the same thing with Pask stepping out. But yeah, there's problems with it, and Farke hasn't played with this kind of shape often in the past, so I think it's only natural that there are still holes in the approach, and hopefully with time, if he does continue using this shape in the league, which I would expect him to with how good it has been, that he improves in coaching this sort of shape, and the out of possession thing will slowly get better when we've trained in it a lot more, and he's found different solutions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Right then, let's do man of the match then. I think we're both going to go Brendan Aronson, aren't we? But
yeah,
I think we should still talk about a couple of the standouts. I think you wanted to talk about a player that I've just given so much love to recently that I'll let you just take the lead on it, because I know why I'm doing it, because I did pick him out for the summer pods and we signed him. But yeah, maybe you should do this, because yeah, I just love him so much.
So yeah, the other guy who was close in this one was Anton Stack. I think he was excellent in this one, both in and out of possession. And this tweet from Johnny Cooper really does emphasise just how much he does a bit of everything. So he's the only player in the Premier League this season who is making 2 or more tackles a game, 2.1 in his case, having 2+ shots in a game, and creating 2+ chances per 90 minutes. So he's the only player to do that for a newly promoted club in any of the last 15 seasons. So you don't often get this sort of level of jack of all trades and playing well at the lower end of the league. That's generally for the teams further up who have been established in the league a few years. So the fact that we've got a player of his caliber in our first season, you've really got to give credit to the recruitment team for this signing, and obviously Adam for picking him out as well.
I'm patting myself on the back, but I'm not the one who got him through the door. So
no. But you were aware of him even before, because you watched a lot of German football.
Yes.
So yeah, he's an excellent player, and although he'd had that spell where he wasn't as effective, I'm putting that down to the bruised or cracked ribs, whatever it was that he had. And that was affecting him, because I know firsthand what a cracked rib can do.
I do think, if I'm being ever so slightly critical, it was just before then where there was still a little bit of inconsistency. But then, yeah, that period was like, clearly he's not right. That Burnley that was so bad when he just didn't close down and stuff. And it clearly was very evident that he wasn't right. But yeah, he's magnificent, isn't he? And I know that the chances created stats probably a bit inflated by set pieces, but I don't care. Like, those numbers are still excellent, even with that being the case. He has to have been right up there for man of the match here, but I agree that he probably doesn't quite get there. I also think Big Dom did a pretty good job yet again. He's now up to 10 goal involvements for Leeds, Martin, and we're in mid-January, which is magnificent to be a free agent signing that a lot of people wrote off, and you're already on 10 goal involvements. I mean, I'm not sure he'll get to 20, but even if he gets to sort of 15, 16, 17 now, it's a really, really good effort from him and a really good first season. Touch wood, he's not had a major injury yet either. He's had a very small one. Actually been quite lucky on that front with a few players where, like, Strouk's not gone out injured yet, and yet he's normally one that picks up something. Metch has only had a really small thing, and he always ends up getting something. So we've been all right on that front, where not too many of them have been significant for the players that usually have them. It's been the ones that are like your long staffs, who usually have very good availability, who's been out. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin, Aronson, Stack, those are probably my 3 standouts. I can't think of anyone else that was so good that it was worth a shout out. Justin was very unlucky with that header that hit the bar. He got over the ball superbly well. Like, it was a really difficult header to score, and yet he nearly did. It was a high cross, and he got himself over it to head it down. Thought that was very unlucky. He had a decent game. He also did a really important block at the other end at one point as well. So he had a decent enough game. And people were a bit worried about when he's in the team that we have a bit lack of creativity without Bogle. But we were okay here, weren't we? So shout out to him as well. Ampadu looked pretty decent in midfield for the most part, other than a couple of moments, as you mentioned, on the goal. But it was just good to have his energy back. And we were winning enough 50-50s with him in there with Stack for at least a good 70 minutes anyway. So yeah, there were some players that did do pretty well here, even though they weren't man of the match. But I think it has to be Aronson, right?
Yeah, 100% it's Aronson. I wouldn't be giving it to anyone else. It'd be rude to, because even before he'd scored his first goals, I'm thinking, "Ooh, Aronson looks up for this.
Right.
He's looking good." some nice energy showing on that flank that he was running down the left side quite often, showing a lot of energy, and I was really enjoying what he was doing. And that was before he'd scored, and then he scored a second. So there's no way I can give it to anyone else. But I just wanted to quickly go back to Anton Stach, because I was looking while you were talking, I was looking over his FB ref, and in the similar players to Anton Stach, I'm not going to tell you which order these are in, but inside the 10 players who are statistically similar, you can, go for it, go.
Is Declan Rice one of them?
Yes.
Yeah, we called him the German. Quite a few people did, actually. I saw quite a few Leeds fans saying that on Twitter as well. The German Declan Rice. Who else would be good ones around Europe? Are there a few in the Premier League?
There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In fact, 10. All 10 of them are in the Premier League.
Okay, is Onana at Villa one of them?
No.
Okay.
This is a fun game, is this? I like this.
Is Tielemans at Villa one of them?
No. But there is a Villa player in there.
It can't be Kamara. I have no idea.
Another guy who is not actually playing as a midfielder, but
is it John McGinn?
A midfielder. John McGinn, yeah.
Right, okay.
I think that will be because of the expected goals aspect of it, and creating quite a lot of XG. But the players in this order from 1 to 10 is Marcus Tavernier, Bruno Fernandes, Mikel Merino, Enzo Fernandez, Declan Rice, Diego Gomez, John McGinn, Lucas Paqueta, Sasa Lukic, and Bruno Guimaraes in 10th.
There was a couple I wouldn't have got there. I was about to actually say Bruno because he's been on corners for Newcastle. But yeah, I wouldn't have got a lot of those. That's still a really good list to be involved in, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous list to be involved in. And just speaking about his chances created, he's actually created more from open play than he has from set pieces.
Well, there you go. I'm just an idiot.
So yeah, it's well, it is quite close. I think he's like early 20s and mid 30s.
So mad, isn't it? Because we've complained about sometimes him maybe not playing the pass when he's sure, being a bit indecisive in moments, and yet he's still putting up those numbers. Imagine if that tightens up a little bit in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. You could be looking at someone seriously good. I actually think he's doing himself some good here for the World Cup. I'm not saying he'll be a starter for Germany because I don't think he would, but there's absolutely no way he isn't going to be a consideration if he continues on the way he's going as a squad player, as something a bit different, because he is very different from Germany's other midfielders, that's for sure.
And he's also got, in terms of the goal contributions, at the rate he's going, he's going to have his best ever season in terms of goal contribution. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists so far, so 5, the most he's had so far. Back when he was 22, in his first season at Mainz, where he got 7 in total, 6 assists and 1 goal. He's already got the most goals in a single season.
That's because he's normally
outside of you. Exactly. But this just shows that he's got these close qualities to be a good box-to-box player, and at the highest level that he's ever performed as well in the Premier League. So yeah, he could end this season.
Is he our best player?
It's close. It really is close
between him and Calvert-Lewin.
Him, Calvert-Lewin, and Jakobiol at the 3 hours. One player for each section. Gabby Goodmanson and Bogle are also quite close, but midfielders is generally one of the ones which is the most important players in the team because they do everything for you. And I think that's certainly what we've got in Anton. And I just want to say how amazing he's been. And yeah, whichever member of the scouting team who picked him out, I tip my hat to you, sir.
Indeed. And I agree. I think the 2 best players for us, / most important. I think Stack's probably our best player. I think our most important player is probably Calvert-Lewin. That's where I'd probably be. But they're probably the 2 in both sections that are the top 2. So yeah. Anyway, I think that's everything. Unless there's anything else you want to say.
Don't think so. I think I'm good.
No, mad game, 4-3 is what it is. We will move on, hopefully. And what's been good about this team is that they will bounce back, and they have been able to bounce back on a number of occasions. I don't think this is the kind of game that's going to cause the mentality of this group to spiral, and we're going to suddenly go on a run of losses like 4-6, 5-8. Like, I don't think that's going to happen under this group now. We've already been through that this season. we tweaked things. We're looking a lot more solid. Everything seems to be working. The only way this collapses now, I think, is if we get injuries to key players that we just mentioned, significant ones for a long time, and that would be a problem. Although if it happened this month, it wouldn't be the end of the world because we've got some time to react to it. But if it happens in February, then goodness me. But let's not think about that. Let's think about the positives. And like I said at the start of the show, the top of the show, I said that West Ham 8 behind us. We've increased the gap in a rough run of games for us that was much easier for them. So really, really positive. That isn't to say it's all over and done with and that West Ham can't win a few games in a row or like go on a decent run of their own at some point. But we have just got that daylight now and we're in a really strong position. We've also got everyone back from injury except for Dan James. So we're in a positive moment right now as Leeds fans. So everyone should be feeling pretty good. And that's what I wanted to end on for a game that was utterly miserable at the end and everyone felt like it was the end of the world. It's not, and that's why I wanted to end this pod on a positive one. Anyway, just a reminder, patreon.com/ASAW Patreon is where we have bonus stuff. We've got a Harry Gray bonus pod at some point in this week because it is the FA Cup and we'll probably find time to do a bit of extra stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. It really helps us out, as we say. But that's all that we have time for today. We'll be back very soon with a preview of the upcoming game against Fulham, who I think we're going to have a fan on for again. And I might be going on to their pod perhaps as well. I'm going to give them a message to see if they need me. And yeah, we'll be back for all that very soon. So all that's left for me to say, as ever, is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you as well, mate.
Thank you, all lovely listeners. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week and that game didn't ruin it and that we've ended on a high note with this podcast. Goodbye.